So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our workshop on Toddler Groups, which I think in the long description for the conference, I put something like, how on earth are we going to do Toddler Groups in the new normal, a workshop for people who know it's on God's heart, but haven't got a clue what we're going to do with all the new government guidelines and things like that. So my name is Helen, it's Helen Ward. I'm the Family and Children's Team Leader from St Thomas's in Crooks in Sheffield. If you joined very, very quickly, then I'm just going to repeat some of my background information for those who've just joined us. So I've been doing that job for 12 years. I have 3 children aged 19, 17 and 12. I'm the head teacher of the Ofsted registered nursery that we have at our church, so I'm a qualified teacher, and yeah, just really passionate about reaching out to families, particularly through Toddler Groups and the things that we can offer midweek. And I'm leading this session with my lovely friend and colleague Laura, who I'm going to ask to she's going to introduce herself now.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Laura. I'm the under 5s leader at St Thomas's. So I started that job in January last year. So I think I maybe led 8 or 9 weeks of Toddler Groups, and then coronavirus happened. So I've got 2 boys, 5 and nearly 3. So that's me.
Yeah, great. And Laura, what's your background before you took this job on?
So before I had my children, I worked I did a variety of different jobs, but also like legal advice. So that's quite different to what I'm doing now. So yeah, that's
super. Brilliant. So I can see that we've got a full screen of people. So we're assuming that either you are all currently involved in leading Toddler Groups, or you're looking to start them at your church or your setting. So we're going to do a tiny, very quick overview of what we were doing pre-pandemic. Then we're going to talk about what we have been doing during the pandemic, but the main focus of our time this morning and then this afternoon is we want to leave most of that time for what are we doing now next, because we have started to reopen, and if possible for those parts of this seminar group, we'd love it if you could unmute, because we just think that actually we probably all want to talk to each other and steal each other's ideas, really, which is what I also put in the seminar description, that we all want to hear, how have you managed it? What are you doing with the risk assessment? What are your thoughts? We just want to learn from one another, don't we? I think that's a key thing for Toddler Groups. And you know, what spaces are you using? How are you cleaning everything? What on earth do you do, you know, to stop or prevent too close social contact and all that type of stuff? So that's our thought, that hopefully we're going to be able to have quite a bit of chat and discussion, to help facilitate us in our planning. So I'm just going to pray and then we'll crack on, I think. So Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity just to spend 55 minutes now just really setting aside time to think about what next and what could be for the Toddler Groups that we're involved in. And Lord, we know that this is something that is on your heart. You say, let the little children come to me. And this is a time where we have so many questions about how can we facilitate that? How can we enable these little children to come into a place where they can meet with you? We just ask that you would use this time to give us fresh ideas, to support one another, to share some good practice, and just be able to step out with greater confidence into the things that are on your heart. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
So as I said, really quick sort of overview. So before COVID, we were doing what I'm sure many of you on the screen were doing. So we had 3 midweek groups happening, which were totally sort of non-Christian in the sense that they're your your very ordinary sort of toddler groups. They didn't have any Christian content to them. It was play and stay. They had about between 40 and 60 children per week. So sometimes 120 sort of people in the building at each of them on very, very popular weeks, sometimes about 80. And then we also did a Thursday group, which was a toddler group, but that had a Bible story, Christian songs and craft, so a bit more structured and more explicit Christian content. And that had about 20 children and 20 adults, so about 40. So that's what we were doing before. But as I said, we're not really going to spend very much time on that because we can't do that anymore. So, but that's just our context. So had some really very, very big groups running. And then Laura has already said she started her role in January 2020. So the vast majority of her employed experience of being an under fives worker has been during the pandemic. So she is, I say to Laura, you are the most experienced pandemic toddler group leader I know, because it's been the majority of your job. So why don't you, Laura, sort of just say, what did we do like during lockdown, the types of things you've done?
Yeah, so during lockdown, initially from last March, we just went online onto Facebook. So on a Monday, we would read a story, so not a Bible story, just a children's story, and we'd do some singing. We did that on Facebook Live so that we could have some interaction with the families at home. So for different songs like Old MacDonald's, they could comment and say like what animal they wanted us to sing next. It's helpful that I had a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, nearly 3-year-old at home, so that I had my children with me, and sometimes my husband, depending on his work. And then on a Thursday, we would do the same again, but it would be a Bible story, and I might use some Duplo or something like that, whatever we've got at home, we had at home to act out the story. And so we did that for lockdown, and that went really well. But we found sort of over the summer into the autumn term, as life opened up a bit, there just wasn't as a demand for it. So I think by October half term last year, we'd stopped doing that on Facebook. But by then we'd started a Zoom meetup for parents with babies, and that worked really well. Not a massive group, but a really committed group. And I think for those mums who've been involved in that, it's been like invaluable to have a time where they could chat with other new mums. So we're still doing that at the moment. Although I imagine over the summer the need for that again will peter out as people can meet up in person. So that's what we did during lockdown. Do you want me to move on, Helen, to the parent support group? Or
so we were just going to say as well, weren't we, the other types of things we've done for families that are more Sunday focused. So yeah, so Laura's just briefly described there what we did for people who weren't connecting with church in any way. I suppose the plus with that, Laura, is that some of those who weren't connecting with church did watch the Thursday Little Steps online, didn't they, with the Bible story. So people so desperate for things to do that people who hadn't engaged with that, or perhaps their work schedule meant they couldn't come along on a Thursday. So we did see more new people connecting with that group that had Bible stories and things like that. And I'm just recalling some of the stories we did, Laura. I'm remembering when someone asked me to do the Old MacDonald had an elephant, and live on Facebook, I'm, waving my trunk around, making elephant noises, all things that have been career highlights for me. That's what I like to call them. So that's what we've done really for midweek stuff. And then on Sundays, and I can see Lisa has already commented in the chat, we've done craft bags. So we did that for the light party, was all in bags, which everyone came to collect. For Advent, we did bags which had 4 weeks worth of craft activities, didn't they, Laura? And then daily Bible reading booklet and an Advent candle and things like that. We did a Christmas story trail around the local shops in our area, and then people could come and collect their prize when they'd done the story trail. And we ordered hundreds of books for that. And then at the moment, we're doing daily Bible Lent reflections, and we've asked all the families in our church to record one. We're working through the book of Exodus, and we're putting them out on our Facebook page. We have a Facebook page as well as a group. So you can check that out. It's just Family Church page. And that's going very well, the Lent reflections, Laura, aren't they?
Yeah, that's really nice. Like with my 5-year-old especially, is just liking seeing different familiar faces every day. Yeah, it's been really nice.
Really good way to include the families. One of my favourites was yesterday, where a little girl called Alma was in the garden recording hers with her mum, and her mum literally said hello and welcome, and then Alma turns around and goes, have we finished yet? So it's very real. It's very real. So they're going really well. And then our kids church, they're doing something on, well, they use Zoom, which they then put onto Facebook, although as of next week they're using StreamYard. So kids church do that at 4 p.m. every Sunday. So that goes out as well via Facebook and YouTube, I should say, as well. So that's what is. If anyone wants to put anything in the chat about sort of what they're doing now, then feel free to do that. But I think lots of people are doing very similar things. I'm sure we're all looking at different Facebook groups about craft bags and what we're doing online and things like that. So, but what are we doing now? So I can only see one screen at a time, but perhaps we should, our page just called Family Church. Laura, do you think you could post that in the chat?
Yeah, will do. Yeah.
Perfect, super, we'll just put a link. So perhaps we could do a sort of show of hands of who has opened up and is doing anything in person currently. So we are. Anyone else doing stuff in person for families currently in terms of toddler groups?
From Monday.
From Monday, great. Who was that? That was Helen, I think.
Yeah.
Helen Potts, lovely. I can't, so anyone else on the second screen? I'll see. Oh, okay, great. Good, yeah. Helen. So Helen Potts, you can help us in this next bit. You can.
Okay.
We'll call on you, but no one else is. Okay. And then Steph says no, but looking at it from April. So brilliant. Okay. Laura's just posted the link, so you can see and click on some of those Lent reflections. You can also scroll back and you can probably see Laura and I being elephants as well, just if you fancy a laugh. So Laura, why don't you explain what is, and like when we started that, and then I'm going to screen share when you want me to the pictures so that people can see how we've set it up. So Laura, I want to say, has done an amazing job of doing all the risk assessment and everything, and I have just signed it all off. So that's why she's doing this, but she needs to take all the credit. So over to you, Laura.
Yeah, thanks. Helen's very good at saying yes when I say I want to spend money on things at the moment. That's it, and get stuff going. So yeah, so since January we've been running a parent support group. So yeah, we've been able to do that because the lockdown rules allow support groups with up to 15 adults, but not including under 5s. I think that's right. So we started that in January. So what that looks like is we do. So do you want to get the slide? It might be easy to get the slide up.
Yeah,
Helen,
I will do. I think I'm doing this one. There we go. Laura, you tell me what you want me to click through. Yeah.
So this is our church. So this is our main worship area that you're looking at, and it's normally like pre-COVID, packed full of chairs to fit everybody in. But at the moment it's empty. So what we've done is, so obviously everyone has to be socially distant. So this is sort of a mock-up that I did when we were sort of looking at getting started. So it involved me crawling around on my knees, trying to work out how we could fit as many people in as we could. So what we basically got is 12 boxes in the church. The boxes are about 1.8 metres by 1.8 metres. And then in between each box, it's a 2-metre gap. So it means that the parent and the baby have got a bit of space within their box. But they are they're always 2 meters away from at least 2 meters away from the next person. So do you want to scroll through the next one?
Yeah. Possibly might need just to click that to get going. There we go.
So that's just a view from the back of the church. You can see all the boxes. There's also some of our equipment for the Sunday services, which is on this picture. And And then,
which gets moved. We don't have it out, do we?
So we can fit 12 parents in our church. So we started on we've been doing this on a Wednesday. And rather than going every week, we've been alternating it. So it means that we can have 2 groups of people, of parents. So since January, we've had 24 parents a week in a 2-week period coming in. And then everybody in their box has a play mat, a box of toys, or a baby gym for them to use in the session. And all of that gets quarantined in between the sessions, so it's all safe. And then this is the practice that I did with the team the week before we started. And so they're just so basically all we can do at the moment is turn up and sort of sit in our boxes and chat. So that's what we've been doing, but it's gone really well. I think one of our main reflections has been normally pre-COVID in the baby rooms, there's lots of talk about the babies, but what we're finding is that the mums are just talking about themselves and how they're feeling. We've had lots of really open conversations, and it's just been it's going ahead. So yeah, I think this is the first week. I think it's a picture you took, Helen, of our very first session. And before we started the group, the word that a lot of our staff members and team had was that was blessed are those who mourn, which felt like a really strange sort of word for a group with involving babies, but actually that's been really true. And there has been lots of space for people to come and talk about how hard things have been, but then also it's just been really positive. The mums are just loving meeting new mums, and for a lot of the parents, it's been the first time they've been able to take their baby somewhere inside that isn't their own living room. So it's been quite moving, and it has just been really good. So in the next couple of weeks, we're starting a second group on a Friday as well, and we advertise that. We didn't even advertise it, we just do word of mouth and a waiting list, and we filled that pretty quickly within a day, because people are just there's just nothing else for parents with babies at the moment. So that's what we've done. We're very much still learning, like what works, what doesn't, what can we do next as the rules change over the next few months. And I can see someone just commented about the non-movers indoors, and yeah, we'd really agree with that. We've done up to 12 months, and there's a couple of mums whose babies are nearly 12 months, and they are just about managing to keep them within the box. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not gonna. It only really works with with non-mobile sort of up to 12 months babies.
So, Laura, if we pause and I'll whiz through some of the questions and we can answer them together. So one person said, how did you persuade church that Toddlers is a support group? So basically, looking at the guidelines, we removed all mention of the word toddlers, because as we said, it's not for children who can toddle. And we've just said you have to be a new parent, it has to be under 1, or a newborn, someone on maternity leave. So that's how we've done it as a support group, by saying it's for women either with their first babies or who are on maternity leave, and that's how we're supporting them during this time. And we just have a very supportive church, so they were just like, yes, absolutely. So I'm afraid I can't necessarily answer about any persuading arguments, because we didn't really need to persuade them. They were really keen for us to do this. Does the support group have to be inside your church? No. So you can run a support group in a church hall. You could run it in whatever public building you are allowed to run support groups now. You can run support groups for vulnerable teenagers. You can run support group for adults with mental health issues or whatever. That's been something that you've been able to do under the guidance for a little while now. So the reason we chose our church, because that isn't actually normally where we run our toddler groups, is just because of the spacing. And also our church has got windows that you can open. So we've been running this session even in January in the snow, with all the sort of windows open, so it's ventilated and it's the biggest space available to us. And because we haven't got anything in person happening, there aren't any chairs there at the moment. I do appreciate someone's just posted that you've got pews, but looking at it, your pews are due to be moved out soon. Yippee! So I'll give you, I think, like Laura said, like families are struggling. I mean, Laura, it's been really emotional. I mean, just share some of the, like, I mean, you've had weeping virtually every week, haven't you?
It's been emotional. I would say someone's cried every week, but gone home happier afterwards and come back the following week. But I think for some mums, you know, their babies were 8 months old, but they'd never taken them anywhere and were quite panicked at the thought of coming out of the house. And like they've got to 8 months, but they'd never fed their baby in front of anybody else. And here they were in a room, quite a big room with, you know, and quite a different space, you know. And I think, it has been, it has felt like a support group. I wondered if it would just feel like 12 parents chatting in a room, but it really has been a support group. You know, you almost forget the babies are there because it's all about the mums. And that's not really through anything we've done. I think it's just circumstance. It's just where those parents are at the moment in these strange times.
You've had quite a bit of like anger as well. I think I think it's really important we're honest with you. So just to explain, you've had one mum who's really struggled with it. Just unpack some of that, 'cause we don't want to make out that it's all been.
It hasn't. No. So the first week she came, I think she was quite disappointed because she'd waited a long time to come to a group. But obviously, as you've seen on the slides, doesn't look like any baby group that, you know, we've been like that we were used to. And so she was quite angry that she had to stay 2 meters away from her friend, and this was what it was like, and she had to wear her mask. But she has come back, but this theme has continued. And yes, that is difficult because I'd love to be able to run a normal baby group like we used to, but we can't. It is the best that we can do at the moment. And I think there's that feeling she feels like that it's like the world against her and her baby, whereas, I mean, it is really unfair, but it's the same for every parent at the moment. It's not unique to her. And I think that's been hard. I suppose she's been quite isolated, but, you know, it's not just her in this position. So that's been quite interesting to deal with, because obviously I can't, normally you would get close to someone to comfort them, but I sort of have to stay 2 meters away from her, and I've got a mask on, so you can't convey empathy in the way that you normally would. So it's been quite interesting to work out sort of how you deal with these situations, because you can't deal with difficult situations like you used to. So that
absolutely. I'm just going to keep scrolling through. So Beck has said that they did this too, really similar, 15 bases and booked on Eventbrite. So yeah, we're looking at the moment, we're using Church Suite, aren't we, Laura? But you're looking at using Eventbrite because there are pros and cons to each one. And obviously that helps you then with the track and trace and getting everyone's details. So yeah, it is a pre-book like only. If your church uses Church Suite, you can do it on there, or you can set it up on Eventbrite. So yeah, so Beck's doing something really similar, and only works with non-movers, absolutely. So how did we advertise it as a support group? Laura, you did a video and just stuck it on social media in our local community sort of Facebook groups, didn't you?
Yeah, initially in January, and it took 3 hours, I think, for the 24 spaces to go. And then we had a waiting list. We had a waiting list that's just kept filling up. And like I said, we advertised this week the new session for Friday, and that filled up within hours. So
yeah. So Nikki said that said she did it in October to December, but she hasn't continued it during lockdown. Obviously, that's personal, like a preference for you, because support groups have been able to operate all during lockdown, but it obviously different volunteers, different churches have different views about that. So that you can restart them whenever you want. Karen's asking, do you do drinks? No. So if you want a drink or a snack, you bring it yourself. We're not doing any hospitality, and it does make that quite clear in the guidance that that isn't something that you should really be offering at the moment. Going through the children we have are movers. Yes, Steph, we've got about 80 movers. So I think, Laura, why didn't you, like, when you took on this job, you felt God say something to you really specific about sort of starting again. So what?
So when I took over in January, the toddler groups were great in terms of their function as a toddler group. You know, the mums in the local area loved coming. We had good quality coffee, toys, space, and it did, you know, in terms of a toddler group, we ticked all the boxes, but we were struggling a bit with sort of forming community. It felt like we were providing a service. And after a few weeks of doing the job, I just felt like God was telling me that we should stop and start again, which I have to say I was a bit apprehensive about sharing this, but this is basically all I felt that God was saying to me. And then COVID happened, and that is actually what has happened. We have had to stop and start again. And so I'm trying to see it as an opportunity. You know, we can't do anything about it, but I'm hoping that whatever we do next is going to, because it's going to have to be small in number, it's going to be a chance to create some real community and that hopefully will be the basis of what happens as we're able to grow over the next few years, really. And I think that's what the parent support group has shown me, that actually it's going to look really different, but it is, you know, since January, the community that we formed is like nothing like nothing that we've seen before. It is proper, you know, it is functioning as a community. And yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on it. But it is incredibly frustrating when I can think at the moment of all the mums at home with toddlers that we know who we were reaching, and we're not at all. Helen,
Super. I'm just going to plough through some other questions, Laura. So we do ask all the mums to keep masks on because that we feel is our reading of the guidance, that actually you should be masked inside. When our youth work was running as well, the youth, only one over 11 was masked, just as you would be in church. So yes, when we've done live gatherings, everyone is masked. So yeah, all the mums are masked for the whole time. And in terms of the adults socially staying distance, well, they are, because they have to stay in their box. And then when they leave, we're using a different exit for them to leave by. And then we haven't had any problems, have we, Laura, with them sort of congregating? Obviously they can walk and exercise pushing their buggy with one other person as they leave. So the clear visors, someone has said, we're not using visors at all because the advice is that they're not actually the safest thing, that you should be masked. And if you want to do some research on visors, it's that visors aren't good, but obviously we could look at clear face masks as another option, which helps communication. Laura, someone has asked, what are the problems with church suites? So what are your pros and cons, or why have you?
Yeah, so I say this, I've only recently started using church suites, so I'm still learning. But I find, so what we've been trying to do when we started it is I didn't want just to advertise the spaces each week and it'd be different mums coming every week. I wanted to have, I wanted it to be a support group, so mums came to, like, they could keep coming. So it's quite hard to do that. So say you've booked a mum in for 6 weeks, but she can't come next week because she's got a doctor's appointment. So you want to cancel her session for 1 week on the sequence, then have another mum come from the waiting list just for 1 week. I've not found an easy way in Church Suite to do that. So it's just little things like that I'm finding it hard to do. I need to sit down with the member of staff from church that uses Eventbrite the most and just work out if it would be better on Eventbrite. But yeah, so I'm using Church Suite at the moment until Easter, and then I'm going to look at what we do next. But there's just a few niggles like that I'm finding it hard to make it work for us with the support group. Yeah. It's good for communication. I'm finding it really helpful for sending out group emails and things for the group.
Do apologise if there's any slight humming on the background of my screen now. I have a teenage son who's decided that 11:30 is appropriate time to get in the shower and wake up. So do apologise if you can hear our shower humming in the background, because it's right above my head. So the fact it's before midday, maybe I should just take that as a victory anyway. The thing about meeting outdoors, so we've not explored meeting outdoors, and that's on our sort of what next. And I'm conscious, Laura, we need to move on to sort of what next ideas as well. But I think one of the questions we've got, and it is genuinely a question, is is it more difficult outside to control the numbers? Because if you meet outside, there's still a limit. And I guess, Laura, you've got a question of anyone could just sort of come and join you, couldn't they? And like, how would you say, oh, I'm really, you know, like, that's it? Because you can't just have a massive toddler group. It's still, there's still some legal limits on how many people can gather outdoors. So I think it's a tricky thing. And also, like Beck said about facilitating outdoors, and the thing about, yeah, like, how do you do the rule of 6 thing or the rule of 2? And yeah, we're just unpacking whether we think an outdoors thing is the right way, or whether it, because if you facilitate something, are you potentially then liable if the police turned up, for example? If you're the facilitator and it's gone slightly over, was it your fault? I think is our question about that. So, you know, and how if you go to a park and someone sees their friend and they're just like, oh, come over here, and then you'd just be like saying, no, you can't. Like, so I think, Laura, is that a fair sort of reflection of your possible fears of outdoors?
And I'm praying that someone with a field comes forward. That's my prayer at the moment. That's got an isolated field that we can use or something.
Well, my view would be that if parents are going outdoors with their children, it's their responsibility to be in the group of 6, if that is the rule at the time. You could also still book people in so that you don't have really swamped numbers. I mean, I'm in a rural area, so we're not like going to meet in a city park, probably only on church premises. So it would generally only be advertised to people who were already connected with, I think.
Whereas obviously we're in an inner city area looking at inner city parks. So I think there's pros and cons for that.
Do you not have suitable church grounds?
No. No, we're on a high street. So Beck, you're waving your hand, feel free to unmute. Right.
No, okay, I just want, I'm like, oh, I don't know whether to say something or not, but the way we were doing it was they met me, received the pack, and then went off on their own.
Oh, for a trail type
when
thing.
It was the rule of 2, the 2 mums could go off in pairs, and when it was the rule of 6, obviously it was slightly easier. One thing I found was, if we went to so we used 3 locations, public places, and when there was a play park, obviously they were just all over the play park and all over each other. But I mean, that's kind of allowed now anyway. So for me, I know exactly what you mean, like that responsibility of having convened all these people into one place. You do feel responsible, but at the same time, it was on balance with, these people need to see somebody.
Yeah.
You know,
and I think it specifically says in the guidelines that if you are a parent at a playground outside, you should not be socialising. It specifically says that about playgrounds and socialising. So unless that's taken down, meeting at a playground is not a good idea, is it? A field would be better, Laura.
Yeah, but we're right in the middle of Sheffield, in a very busy suburb. So fields are a bit hard to come by. So Anne Carter, I don't know, I can't necessarily see you on my screen, but Anne, oh hello, I've just seen you waving, thank you. You've asked the question about the most in need, like maybe not coming along. So this comes into our sort of what next ideas. So one of the things that we're looking to start is, because of my connections through nursery, really, I know 2 health visitors, a masked worker and a social worker, who are based in our area. So one of the new groups that we will start is, we're going to ask the health visitor, it's going to be an invitation sort of group where we approach the health visitor and the masked worker and say, we're going to start a group on a different day, and you can populate it with the families that you think are most at risk, like the new mums. So that's one of our what next ideas. It would be totally new for us. We've not worked with secular agencies in that way before. But really during lockdown, we've had so much more connection with health visitors and the masked team through nursery due to the needs of the families. So again, it'll probably just be under ones, but that's our plan, as soon as possible, to start doing that once we've got this other group. So that's, we're really excited by that. And actually just yesterday we had an email from a lady who messaged us saying she wanted to come along, and we have a little box that tells you your age bracket, and she's ticked the age bracket 0 to 17, and she has a 3-month-old. So yeah, that would amazing just how we feel that this is a new thing that God's calling us to step out into. And then this teenage mum contacted us yesterday asking to come along. So we are excited that that's you know, a new thing that God could be calling us to. Or Gina's just put, we tried to organise something that didn't gather lots of people in the park, but the council, yes, you're correct, Gina, you need to get permission from the council for meeting outside. They were quite concerned. So I think it's an interesting one there. So, and if you have a booking in system, someone said, then you're protecting yourself. Yeah, so if you're doing something in your building, you have to have a record for contact tracing of who was in your building. So that's the law. Just as if you do a church service, everyone has to check in, you have to get everyone contact details. So you nobody can really at the moment do any sort of open door, you know, come along type thing. Well, for a start, you probably have a limited number of bubble spaces anyway because of social distancing. So but you are required by law to keep everybody's details for 21 days for contact tracing who's in your building. So Laura, do you want to move on to sort of like what next and some of the things that we're thinking of for what next?
Yes, so we're sort of just looking at how we can maybe look at having some of the older preschoolers and toddlers, how we can do things for them again. And I think, so Helen and I have been sort of having a bit of blue sky thinking. So we haven't really got many firm plans, but these are some of our ideas. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to trial 2 toddler praise sessions in the church. So this will be like a church service, which is why we can do it now. And so, yeah, so have you got the slide you want to
Yes, I'm going to show you. Yep. Hang on a minute.
So we've ordered a load of these mats. Well, Helen's ordered hundreds of them, I think, so that we can...
These ones?
just to see whether, for the older ones, having sort of like a space that's very clearly marked out will help their parents keep them on the space. Our understanding of the rules is if that child is on the space and momentarily strays out of the space and the parent pulls them back, that isn't an issue. It's sort of like, it's like more persistent mixing that's an issue. So if they hop off and the parent grabs them back in, we think that's okay. So whereas I suppose previous things we've done before COVID would have been like hour and a half long, this will probably be about 30 minutes, 40 minutes max, because I think we recognise that it's not at the moment, it's just not going to be possible to keep a preschooler within that space for longer. So for that, like toddler praise will involve some music, we'll do some action songs because they can't sing obviously in church at the moment, some craft, a story from the front, and they can bring their own snack to eat during the session. So we're going to try that out. We've also been thinking that, so basically moving forward, everything will have to be more class-based. So once we can have toddler groups, and once the rules allow those toddler groups to start in the next few months, again, it will be much shorter sessions. One of the ideas we've had is like a toddler book club. So they'd come, we'd read a story. Again, there'd be a craft and some singing. Yeah, so that's sort of where we've got to really. And again, like we've just talked about sort of thinking about the outdoor options, whether there will be anything that we can do outside. Have you got anything to add to that, Helen, that I've missed?
I was just going to say, I'm just going to scroll through. So you can see these boxes that we've got. So basically anything that we do with families, everyone will have their own box, it will have their own craft in it, and then we'll just quarantine it all. And the other thing that I've done is I went to the publishers' discount type shops, and they had some Bible stories that were, you know, £1 a book. So we've bought 15 copies of every book. So if we do a toddler praise, or if we do like the book club idea, we'll just buy 15 copies of the book, so that there's not that sort of desire of the toddler to come to the person who's reading the book, because their parent will have their own one in their space. So that's why we thought of doing that. And obviously we've got publish discounter. It's just the shop on the moor in Sheffield city centre.
Works or
so like the Works, or there's, you know, any of those type of shops where you just, oh, someone's asking a question. Kirsty.
Yeah, I was going to say, would you let the kids take the book home then? You know, ask for a donation of £1 from the family and let the kid take the book home.
Possibly. Hadn't thought of that. Making a note of it now, Kirsty. Excellent.
I know if I said I want to buy 15 copies of a book every week, my PCC would go, no.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that, you know, there's also 10ofthose.com where you can get, books. Yeah. But I just thought, if I say, actually, if they make a £1 donation, they can take the book home, then my PCC would go, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, good idea. I've written it down.
I think that idea of having everybody having a book is really brilliant, because then you're modelling to parents how to read the story with their child, aren't you? Yeah. So important when they come on to school later on. I've got parents in school that just don't know how to do that, and children who don't know where the words start on a page.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I was speaking to two of my friends who are speech and language therapists about a kid that we've got concerns about. And they were saying they think that over the next 12 months they're going to have real problems with children with speech delay. So anything we can do with reading, anything we can do with actions, anything we can do with repetition to help that, because these kids have lost a year. Yeah. This kid's 15 months and has never been to any form of mums and tots group or kids socialization. So, you know, we'll be helping out in that sense with anything that we can do. Yeah. So, and they said reading books is great.
And I think also then libraries are opening up, aren't they? They're one of the first things as well, which I think is another reason why the government's done that. So just to say, a few people have talked about a weekend toddlers. So yeah, we do have, pre-COVID, we should have said this actually, we did have a dad's, we have one that's for men, because we think it's really important that we encourage men to do things like that and for dads to gather. So we called it Dads and Little Uns, and that's part of our future, isn't it, Laura, as well?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Someone's also just asked in the comments about what the book club would be, and we're still working on that. But I would imagine.
But we're going to do it now, where they pay £1 to have a book. That's what we're going to do.
I was thinking you could do some books about cars. You could read some stories about cars, and they could have a few toy cars each to play with. And as part of you do some singing about, you know, bouncing up and down a big red tractor, kind of a theme every week, that kind of thing. You could have a Gruffalo week. I don't know. Yeah, we're still working it out, but that was just one idea, because you could do it like as a class based, and we were thinking we could even maybe run 2 sessions in a morning with a gap in between for cleaning, if it was just like half an hour, 40 minutes a session. Yeah.
The thing about paying at the moment, because we've done it as a parent support group, we've not charged anybody anything, whereas obviously we were charging for toddlers because we were providing snack and a craft. So at the moment we're totally free. And I can't imagine that actually we're going to go back to charging anytime soon, because for that parent support group we're not providing anything that is like a cost. So I think that's and the other thing, I just had to comment, someone put the dad session being lively. Yes, that's our experience as well. The dad sessions have a different feel to the midweek one with mums. And after the session that tends to be midweek with more women that come to it, all the toys used to get put back in the cupboard in the way that, like, you know, organised way. And then after dad's group, we'd open it and we can go, the dads have been here. The toys are just randomly thrown in this store.
My husband always needed to lie down after the dad session. I always used to have limited sympathy because I was doing 3 a week.
So I mean, casting no aspersions, but yes, it did seem to have a more lively feel to it than the other ones. So.
stand up for the dads, because
Yes.
at Toddler Group, before it happened, the dads were the best at tidying up.
Oh, excellent. You
Mums would sit there, leave me to it. All 4 or 5 dads would clear up, and they used to get their children to help them.
Oh, brilliant. Well
They
done.
were
We need
mums.
your dads. We need your dads. Someone, Lisa's put about the historic toddler group being mostly secular, which is our experience as well, actually. And then, as we said at the beginning, we had this Thursday group, which was where we had the Bible stories and songs. And one of our thoughts about restarting that midweek is that we think that actually there would be more people who are just so desperate to come along to something that we imagine that that will be more popular than it used to be pre-COVID. Because people's desire to be out of the house. And I know that some people on this screen have already done stuff with families back in their church, because I saw that earlier up in the comments. We haven't yet brought families back to church in a large numbers, and I have to be honest and say that's because we're a large church and we have a large number of families. We can only get 12 families in, whereas actually in our context we have about 150 0 to 11s in our church, so that we would just be excluding so many people. So that's another reason for us to look at doing Toddler Praise, because we're going to do some practice sessions where we invite a few church families along for them to really go through the pain threshold of what coming back to church with your little child looks like. And you are going to have to keep them sat on the mat, and you are going to have to do it on a rotation. So we're doing that with our newly appointed team leader, our new rector, because that's a big issue for us because of our context, and I appreciate not everyone is in that context. So yeah, it's going to be a very painful process for our families, that it's unlikely we're ever going to have a situation where they're all coming back to church anytime soon. It's going to be possibly once a month and booking in and things like that. So that's our other reason for looking at doing something midweek, not for church families, but so that the people who are part of our church who do come along to that can understand what coming back to church means. So Laura, what other things did we have for what next? The Saturday stuff, and we've already talked about we want to get some dads involved in that. Although I should say, actually, another thing, speaking up for dads, Helen, who just commented, is that leading nursery and being the head teacher, that one of the real joys we've had during pandemic is that so many dads are working from home that they're actually bringing their children to nursery, doing that drop off and collection, way more dads. So actually some mornings we have all dads standing in the queue to do the drop off for nursery, which we've never had before. So actually we've had more connection with fathers because they're working from home than we have ever had before. So that's been actually another advantage of lockdown, which we never really thought would happen. And that's really important for preschoolers, is the involvement of men in their lives. So, and
I think also, whilst the dads group that ran in pre-COVID was more busy, they had more community. There was a smaller number of them, but the community was greater than the toddler groups in the week. Didn't they seem much more keen for that connection? That was our experience anyway.
Could someone maybe mute their background? That would be great. Thank you. So we've talked about doing the book club idea. The reason we're doing Toddler Praise is that it counts as an act of worship and not a toddler group. So that's the other thing. Then if you do it as an act of worship, you can then have more people in potentially, depending on, because of it's not a support group that needs 15 adults. So there are other advantages. If you do something with a Christian content and call it an act of worship, you can get more people in. So someone just said, love the loopholes. It is. I'm not stretching the law. That is true. An act of worship can have the capacity of your building in, whereas a toddler group can't. So that's another thing to think about, because we had thought about doing more and more things that we could classify as active worship, but we don't want to be irresponsible. But yes, just want to, and as Beck said, children have definitely learned to socially distance now. And I think that's another thing, in some ways, because children who are at school for over fives, they will be more used to social distancing, but there may be under fives who aren't, because if they're going to nursery, they don't have to socially distance in the nursery. So, but then Beck said a 2-year-old, exactly half their life has been in lockdown. So it's a really emotional thing, that, isn't it? Like when you think of it like that. So I think we've got about 5 minutes. Are there any other questions that people wanted to ask or ideas? I really hope you found that helpful. Oh, toddler team. Sorry, Rachel. Yeah, I did see that. So in terms of the team, because we can only get 12 parents in those boxes like you saw, we've just asked for just 2 church families who have under ones to be at that, and then Laura is there. So the team is way less than normal, because all the toys are in these boxes. You're literally just grabbing a box and putting it in the square. So there's no setting up in the same way. So actually your team requirements are considerably less than if you are running, because you haven't got anyone in the kitchen, you haven't got everyone, you know, doing all the cupboard stuff that we've just talked about. You're not setting up lots of different tables. No, it's not the same box per family each time, because we have a week in between each session. So whereas if we did 2 sessions in a week, which we're going to, we've just bought more boxes. So and then they can rotate around. So I would say, Laura, what would you say? I think the team requirements are actually less.
They are less, and also like before, we were really trying to have it, like before COVID, a focus on the church mums being the team, and that is still true. We need them there to make the connections, but practically it helps that I'm there, just because they're like the babies that some of the church mums, their babies are crawling now, so they actually can't help set up and clear away, because their babies can't touch all the equipment that's going to go to be used by different babies. So in a weird way, actually, yeah, it has to be a lot simpler because of all the rules. So yeah, and it is just now setting up the group felt like a lot of work, I think, and a lot of thinking, but once it's set up, it's really easy, really simple.
Yeah. So yes, and Laura, could you save the chat log?
Yeah.
That's great, brilliant. And yeah, and Helen's just said like they use bags and not boxes. That's another option. We've got the luxury of having a number of rooms. Yes, we can share the risk assessment. Laura just used the Church of England like one, so we've not done anything different to that sort of outline. So it will be the same areas as anybody's got on a Church of England one. If you're not from the Church of England, I'm guessing you'll have your own one, either Methodist or Baptist or so on. I'm just scrolling through. So indoor groups, so Sarah just said indoor groups with toddlers and social distancing. So that's what we're trialing with Toddler Praise. So we're going to allow moving toddlers, we're going to allow, and we're going to trial it. After we're doing it in 2 weeks' time. Maybe we should have done the session in 2 weeks' time. We'll tell you how it works. But Bex just shared that actually toddlers have got used to it, and I think they will, and parents are going to have to get used to it as well, because I don't think that actually even in September we're going back to toddler groups how they used to be, with everyone just marauding around and touching everything, are we? So because if everyone is being vaccinated by the time of the 31st of July, then that's only their first vaccine. So if it's 12 weeks, that it's not that in September we're suddenly going to have a whole load of everybody having, you know, 2 jabs and everything, and our toddler groups are good to go in September. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. Great. I think we should we tie up there? I think, Laura, would you be able to finish in a prayer? I think that would be really, really helpful. I'm just checking if there's any other questions that we've missed. So are you classed as the numbers? Oh, okay, so that's a really good point. So if you're the person leading the group, so Laura isn't classed in the numbers, but the mums who come and help as part of the team are classed in the numbers. Okay, yeah, and that's so. Laura, you've got about 100 seconds to pray, according to that little message we got from the organisers. So go.
Hang on a minute, sorry. I'm just very quickly saving the chat before it kicks me out of the breakout room. I've done it.
Okay.
Right, thank you, Lord, for the time that we've had together this morning to share these ideas. Lord, I just pray for each and every one of us and our different churches and the different ways that we all work. Lord, I just pray that over these coming weeks and months, Lord, you would just speak to us and just show us the right way forward. Lord, I just pray that we would be able to see clearly the way forward for our under fives work. And I pray that this would be it wouldn't feel like a season of restriction, Lord, but it would just feel like a season of opportunity and where we could see new things happen, Lord, and new ways of building community. I pray that you'd be with us all for the rest of today and the rest of this conference. Amen.
Amen. And for those who've just said, the second session is a repeat. So we're not doing anything different this afternoon. So thank you so much, everybody. I think we can just exit and return. So we'll see you on the other side. Thank you. Bye.
You. Bye.